clerk, please note all commissioners present. Stand for the pledge, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next, approval of the minutes of the following meeting, the regular meeting held on July 5, 2022. Your pleasure.
I move to approve the minutes.
Moved by Commissioner DePietro. Do we have a support?
Support.
Commissioner DeRosa, any questions or comments on the minutes? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Proclamations, presentations, and awards, there are none. Approval of the agenda.
Approve it as presented.
Support.
Moved by Commissioner DePietro, supported by Commissioner Alholm. Any questions or comments on the agenda? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Public comment, anyone wishing to address the board, please come forward, state your name and address, and you may speak.
Good evening, Commissioners. Marquette County Sheriff Greg Zybert, for your pleasure, the June 2022 stats. For the road patrol, we had 258 calls for service. They made 16 arrests. They policed 28 accidents, issued 82 citations, received 204 civil papers, and they served 160. The jail lodged 76 males, 34 females. They released 77 males and 36 females. The average daily population has gone up. It's up to 71, and the average for federal prisoners is 6. Search and rescue, their training, they did some dive training, boat operations, arc search pattern techniques. Search and rescue, they had a mock search, ATV safety, chainsaw safety, winch operation safety, equipment maintenance. K9, cadaver water operations, cadaver land search, obedience, tracking, and then we all had our firearms qualifications, pistol, long run, and shotgun. Calls for assistance, Ishpeming City, we assisted on a 4-year-old missing child, a line search, a cold case with Forsyth Township, a missing female Forsyth Township, missing female Marquette Township. We searched 3 times. We had a capsized canoe and subject in the water. Public safety classes, they taught ORV safety in Gwin and snowmobile club for 20 students. They had the Iron Range roll bike race. They provided search and rescue and medical assistance, and then triad training, life tracker presentation to Marquette City. Currently, triad has 26 people with the life tracker on them. Rescue 131, they did station ropes and rope exercise at Morgan Meadows, low angle rope rescue. Called for assistance. 5 personal injury accidents, Negaunee Township, 2 Ishpeming Township 1 and Neely Township 2. We did a standby for Sands Township, Ishpeming Township, a structure fire, Negaunee Township, a lift assist, Marquette City water rescue assist, Tilden Mine fire, and then public safety classes and events, the Marquette County firefighters meeting and Genesis e-tool demo and training, battery versus hydraulics, so they're getting modern with battery tools, using those. Any questions on the end? Yes.
How are you doing with your staff? I know we were kind of short people from retiring or whatever, attrition and that, so how are we doing with that?
Yeah, we're down, I think 5. We were down 7, and we brought 2 on. We currently have 3 in the academy right now.
So you sponsored 3?
We sponsored 3, and they're due to graduate in the end of August, and it'll probably be right around the end of the year where they're able to work on their own after field training and that with an officer. So we're slowly getting back up, and the guys, they're working a lot of overtime. There's a lot going on in the summer, but we're making do.
Okay, so you said you were down 5 and you got 3 in the academy, so you're gonna try to get 2 more, you're still working towards that?
Well, we did fill, I think it was Salo, and that was before the 2. So I think we're down 1. We will be down 1 once get those out of the academy.
And I was glad to see your people at the parades. So they go there, they bring the boat and everything, it looks good. So.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Oh, one question, Greg, so once they leave the academy, they still have 6 months of shadowing or training?
I think 5 months, yeah, with a field training officer, every different aspect of, be it domestic violence or, I think there's 2 or 3 different field training officers that they have to work with and satisfy. They're still on probation.
So that would be for anybody, even if you were taken in from another department, somebody would have to have a,
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
thank you.
Maybe not as long. If we were to do a lateral transfer from another department that had 5 years,
Okay.
Yeah, there's certain things.
So it takes time to fill a void.
It does.
Right.
It does.
Thank you.
Any other questions from commissioners? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Public comment? If you're wishing to address the board, please come forward, state your name and address, and you may speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Brad Newman with MSU Extension, here based in Marquette County. I do government and general community development education throughout the UP. And just a few things I wanted to update you on. One, I wanted to let you know about a couple of projects running in Powell Township. So Powell Township is participating in a campus-based design workshop or project that we have. It's called the Sustainable Built Environment Initiative. Basically, you got a community with sort of an underperforming area of the town or the township, and through visioning, community engagement, we help the community sort of think about new ideas to try to make that area better performing, whether it's environmentally better performing or more of a social aspect, and certainly economic development is part of that. When we create a place where people want to be, hang out, and enjoy themselves, we see natural spin-off, of course, with economic development. So we've had our School of Planning, Design, and Construction faculty in the county. It was late in June. We held a kickoff meeting for this project, and we had a couple of graduate students as well in the area staying for a couple of nights at the Thunder Bay Inn. And so we gathered a bunch of community feedback with the kickoff meeting that night, and we'll have faculty back in the county 2 more times to do another follow-up meeting with the community, test those design ideas, tweak them 1 more time, and then deliver a final project report. So Powell Township's got some aspirations. They certainly have some really eager volunteers with the new Big Bay Stewardship Council that's trying to move some things there. So we're excited to be part of that. There was the opportunity to sort of partner that project with another design project from MSU. This one's out of the College of Engineering, and it's the state's Safe Routes to School program, which MSU has a relationship with MDOT and the Michigan Fitness Foundation to help communities develop a action plan for Safe Routes to School funding. So of course that comes from the federal government, that kind of assistance, but a community or a school needs to have a action plan identifying some problem areas with safety, transportation, and prioritize those needs. And so what we do is help the community. We had a walking audit also in June. It was paired with that Sustainable Built Environment Initiative meeting. We started with a walking audit with community members, with students, with some teachers from Powell Township School, identified some concerns that all of the community has, from pedestrian safety and cycling. And you know, one thing that I learned is that Powell Township School, they really make full use of the town, uptown, walking around during the school day. They do a lot of their curriculum and learning with school, with students by experiencing the community, getting out, going to Draver Park, or maybe getting us all the way as far as Burns Landing to do some outdoor education. So walkability is pretty important in Big Bay. You might not think of it, it's, you know, a small town, but we're hopeful that this will add to sort of that sense of place in Big Bay as well, even though it's a school-based initiative. Anyway, at the end of this design assistance, the school's going to have a project application that they can submit right to the state, right to MDOT for funding, and we got a pretty high success rate. The school's likely to get $230,000 or $240,000 for some basic infrastructure right around the school to help with walkability. So we're excited about that. So we're going to have a lot of MSU presence in Powell Township for the next several months. Something else I wanted to mention today, we had our Dean of the College of Ag and Natural Resources in town. We had the Provost and our Director of MSU Extension and the Director of Ag Bio Research. They were here in Marquette on a statewide tour trying to reach out and connect with community members and just sort of a listening session to hear from the community. And so hopefully folks knew about that and had the opportunity to talk directly to some of our leadership. So we've got a really excellent visionary director of MSU Extension. I'm excited that he's made the trip here to hear from folks in the UP. Last thing I wanted to say is you have a flyer there for a program that I'm going to be kicking off in October. It's our Citizen Planner program. This marks the 20th year that the Citizen Planner program has been a statewide program in Michigan. We've had over 5,000 participants through this program. It's a real impactful program for folks serving on planning commissions or zoning boards of appeals, teaching not only kind of the fundamentals, roles, and responsibilities, but also some of those best practices that we need to really separate one community from the next to really attract and retain the people that we need to. So I'm excited to launch this program in partnership with the Resource Management Department, Tira and Emily and Karen with the Planning Commission. They were eager to have this class here, and this would be one of our first classroom in-person programs with Citizen Planner for a couple of years. So I'm excited to do that again, and I hope that you'll share that information with your municipalities. I'm going to be getting it out real soon. I'm not even sure the registration's open. You've got the first flyer that I printed and distributed. So I'll start marketing that, and I hope we have a good turnout. It's going to be at the Marquette Township Hall. So
What's the cost for the townships?
the cost of the program is $250. There is a discount for groups, and that comes with I think it's a 400-page book that is really a key resource. I know a lot of people in their first few months on the job take that to every single meeting. They've got it with their master plan and their zoning ordinance. It's a key resource.
We spoke about training at the last planning commission meeting, and you had responded to a request for information that I had passed on to you. So there is quite a bit of interest on the my planning commission to pursue something like this. So appreciate this. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I know Michigami's got some new folks in the role of the planning commission, the zoning administrator. Marquette Township's expressed some interest, so it seemed like there was a good opportunity to do this. So I'm excited about it. So just wanted to give some updates from my area programs. Thanks for your support. Have a good rest of the summer. Thanks.
Any other public comment? Any other public comment? Hearing none, we'll move on. Review of claims and accounts, total expenditures for the period July 1, 22 through July 14, 22, $787,502.55. It does not include the check payable to Elder Delta Co-op, biweekly payroll, the period ending July 9, 22, $723,884.38. Your pleasure.
I'd move we pay the bills as presented.
Motion by Commissioner Nordine to pay the bills. Have a support.
Support.
Mr. Alholm, questions on any of the bills? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next, check number 213691 dated 7/15/22, $1,626.92 payable to Elder Delta Co-op Electric, and Commissioner Alholm was recused. She serves on the board of Elder Delta.
So moved.
Moved by
Support.
Commissioner Adamini to pay the bill. Support Commissioner DeRosa. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No public hearings, privileged comment, audit presentation, Anderson Tackman and Company, PLC. Welcome.
I'm Mike with Henderson Tackman, present this year's audit again. Since it's nice and warm, I figure I'd just present as long as it's 80 degrees outside. Once it gets under 80, we'll call it a night. If you have questions as we go through, please ask. We've all kind of gone through the rodeo a few times, so looking at page 3 is the opinion. So you have an unmodified opinion, which means you complied with all the generally accepted accounting principles. It says that your statements, not ours, and that we take a sampling of transactions. We don't look at every single
Are we
transaction.
looking at the thick one?
The thick one, yep. I know, everybody wants the little one. Looking at page 14 and 15, starting on page 15, when you roll the county up in total, it added about 18 million to the bottom line in the current year. 10 million came from the business type activities. 7 million came from the governmental activities. That's leaving you with a total fund balance of just over $63 million. 98 million's in the business type activities, which we'll talk about in a minute, and the governmentals with a deficit of 35 million. But if we kind of look at the governmental on page 14, the two big things that are factoring in, as we all know, is your pension liability of roughly $33 million and the retiree health insurance of $39 million. Once you take those two out, you're sitting good. You're in the same boat everybody else is with these large pension liabilities rolling in here.
OPEB ones were about 76 million, not that many years ago, so it made dramatic
You've made
improvement.
some, if we jump ahead, let's go to the graph packet. And if you look at the back, we actually have two graphs, graph 6 and 7. And you can kind of, 6 is the net pension liability, and we've trended that out over the last 5 years. And it stayed fairly constant right around that 35 million, except for 2018, there was a big jump. And the main reason for that is the investment income that the plan is receiving. There was a drop in 18, so we had a drop, or sorry, reverse gain, so that actually lowered your liability. Then the market kind of stabled out and it went back up. So you've made the hard decisions. You kind of have seen this flat line. Now it's just waiting for time to go on for that to come down. And that's where, when you look at the next one, the OPEB liability is, yeah, 2018, you were just under $70 million. You're down to under 40 million. So that's really starting to come down over time with the changes to the plan that's been made over time.
I'd like to thank the board and the staff on that one.
Mhm. Flipping back to the big book, and let's look at page 21 and look at the business type activities. There was a $10 million gain for the year in the business type activities. The two big ones is the medical care facility had about a $4 million gain. That's par for the course for them. But the airport actually had a $6 million gain in this past year. And when you kind of look at that, a big piece of that 5 million of that is AIP project revenue that came in the current year. So you're showing that as revenue in the current year, but but it's actually expensed over its useful life. So when we kind of look at the fund itself, and if we would just take the 6.2 million, we back out the depreciation expense of 1.7, you would have had a gain of roughly $8 million. 5 million of that was the AI pre-project, so you would have had a gain in the airport of 3 million last year. And a lot of that is coming from the CARES and COVID funding. But if you take that piece out, the operations of the airport had roughly $500,000 gains with the increase in different revenue streams that you're generating out there. So I think we're kind of seeing all the changes that have been put into place over the years come to fruition where it's sustaining itself going forward. In relation to that, there was no transfer in from the airport stabilization fund this year again either. However, you did pretty much drain that fund and moved it over to the sewer fund for that project. So the airport stabilization fund's pretty much dry at this point now, going forward. Flipping back to page 18 and looking at the funds, not a whole lot of changes except for, kind of focusing on the general fund a little bit. And the general fund had a gain of $14,000 this year, giving you roughly 12.6 million in fund balance. Now we can go back to the charts. So if we look at the first graph, you can see over time, over the last 5 years, you've been slowly growing the fund balance in the general fund. We have our 60-day and 120-day benchmarks in here, and that's expenditures. So you are now over that 120-day benchmark. But the other thing to kind of look at is a lot of that money is reserved also for different buckets. They call it non-spendable, which is prepaid expenses, inventory. You can't use that for day-to-day operations. There's another roughly ballparking $2 million that you've already assigned of that fund balance for projects in the future. That's what you're going to spend them on. So that actually drops, they call it unrestricted, unreserved, to about 10 million. So even though you have 12 million, the 120-day benchmark's 8 million, you think you have 4, it's more like 10 once you do that. And you got to take into account what other projects are you considering coming in the current year of using that fund balance. So even though it looks high, there's other strings and other pieces to that going forward. And I always say is when you look at that fund balance of where should that number be, it all depends on the situation that you're in. Of where's the revenue coming in versus when your expenses are going out, or what items are you planning on doing in the next year or two that you're saving up for. I know that's one of the things also you've been looking at saving to do different projects in the next coming years here.
I guess I have a question. So
Yep.
we received $13 million in ARPA funds. I don't know if we got it half and half or we received it. So is that part of the fund balance then?
No.
So that those are,
Well, part of it was received in 2021, but it's recognized as deferred revenue until the expenses occur. And the other half was received in 2022. So really, none of it's in this yet.
so that's set aside as deferred revenue, so it doesn't come into our,
In 2022, we will have some expenditures to show for it because we have, the board has approved multiple projects so far.
what about so we got roughly 18 million in CARES funding. I don't know if it's, I know we got ARPA, CARES, different things, but 18 million at Sawyer, and now I heard you say that Sawyer's revenue went up. Is that part of that, and that's involved in all of that?
It is part of it, and the way that the CARES Act, the CARES money at the airport is reimbursement based, So as the airport, every quarter, I submit a reimbursement request for the airport's operating expenses. So those are running, I want it off the top of my head, between 500 and 700,000 a quarter. So as I report those, that money is coming in from the CARES Act. So I think Mike referenced about 3 million that was received through the CARES Act in 2021 in the airport fund.
Because some of that money that comes in, it's paying for our operations, which we would have otherwise had to pay for.
Right.
So it's kind of, and I guess I was concerned a little bit when you said that the airport stabilization fund was depleted. And that's about right? It's depleted now?
Yeah, and so these funds are going to be kind of your version of that going forward, but it's held in a different pot, so.
Okay.
You know, we finally got a little help from the federal government for our airports. Essential Air Service in the UP runs between 1 and 3 million for all the airports. So over the last 30 years, they've gotten 30 to 90 million for their operations. We got zero. We fund our own. So this CARES money was a little help finally for Marquette County Airport, but the other airports been getting funding here for the last 3 decades.
And if I might add, Commissioner, that fund will continue to increase because we're still seeking those through at least through 2023, those reimbursements and part of the first quarter of 2024 under the CARES Act for maintenance and operational costs. So that fund that 3 million will continue to increase.
So just so I understand that, so, you know, we were allocated 18 million, and I think later on it was increased a little bit, maybe 2 more million. But that's not money we got in the door and put in our accounts. That's reimbursable. So we're allowed to submit things to use that money that's been allocated to us.
Yes.
And a big chunk of it is capital projects that.
I
We won't
understand.
see it.
No, I understand. Tearing buildings down and things like that, yeah, I get it. Okay.
Yeah, they kind of did the funding in 2 pots. Is they said, here's the CARES money, and that's reimbursement based. So here's what you spent, here's what you get back, kind of 1 for 1. And then they had, here's the ARPA money, the recovery money, and they said, here's this pot. And how it reflects in the statements, they said, you got that cash, but you can't record it as revenue until you actually spend
It's
it.
deferred revenue, as you were saying.
And so it's recorded up on the balance sheet as deferred revenue. So they're treating it 2 different ways, but as everybody's talking about it, it kind of does get balled up as COVID money, CARES money, ARPA money. It does get rolled up. So knowing the 2 funding buckets and how it's accounting for actually helps see how it got all layered in over time.
I'm glad to see that Sawyer, you know, the whole thing seems to be doing pretty well, because I was concerned when we moved the airport out to Sawyer, and the whole idea was that we had all those areas around Sawyer that were around the airport that were supposed to have rent revenues and was supposed to support the operations of the airport, but it never quite did that, you know? We ended up having to sell things, and we ended up getting the airport stabilization to try to prop that up, because we never quite could get it self-sustaining. And so I was worried that someday that airport stabilization fund would be depleted, although it lasted many years, you know, so we kept finding ways to put money into
That was
it.
going to expire in 2009.
Right. So it's been, 13 years longer than we thought. Or, is that right? Yeah. So, yeah, I guess I'm always thinking that someday we're gonna run into that problem, but we're good for the moment.
We're in a good position going.
Thank you.
We've reduced our operating expenses on a regular basis the last 3, 4, or 5 years with Dwayne out there and the things that they've done. So that's going in the right direction also.
And that's where, if you pull the CARES COVID money out of the airport operations, you still would have been above break even this year.
All right, thanks.
All right, looking back at the general fund, looking at the graphs, so there's kind of the fund balance one. Then we have the current year revenue, kind of where's the money coming from? And the bulk of it is coming from property taxes, no surprise there. With that, but if we look at the 5-year trend on the next one, been very flat for the most part, you know, 20, you saw a bump because that's when the bulk of a lot of that CARES money came in as revenue. In that year, it kind of came off. This year, because of timing issues, but very flat revenue over the last 5 years. You know, if we look at it from this perspective of roughly you've added $1 million in revenue over the last 5 years. So when you look at that of 25 million, it's pretty flat, pretty stable. Because I think that rolls into the next graph, which is just where are you spending the current year's money? You know, no big surprises here. Law enforcement, you know, transfers out, public records, you know, employee benefits. Nothing's jumping out of the page there saying, oh, here's anything different. But that's when you look at the next one over the last 5 years.
Parts in the law enforcement are 40% of our budget.
Yeah. And it's a big piece of it. And that's where if you look over the last 5 years, you had a bigger uptick in 21 in expenses. The main reason for that is you put an extra $1 million payment into MERS and an extra $1 million payment into your OPEB plan above your required contribution, bringing those costs up. But other than that, there again, you've been fairly flat with the expenditures, you know. So you're living within your means. And that's when you kind of look at your budget, you know, it proves that out of, you know, you budgeted for a $10,000 loss, you came in with a $14,000 gain, you hit it pretty much right on the nose. So you're budgeting well, you're sticking to your budgets, you're not overspending, you're not going out and saying, oh, here's this pot of money, here we go, you're doing the right things of budgeting revenue conservatively because there's so many different unknowns with revenue out there. And same with the expenses of, you're saying, this is the revenue we got, this is what we can spend, where other places will look at it and go, oh, here's what we think we're going to get in revenue, we're going to spend that, but then they're not realizing it and they're going backwards. So you're doing the budgeting the right way. It's hard to do it this way, but you're doing it the right way. You've made the hard decisions that we talked about earlier of making the modifications to the pension plans and the retiree benefits. You know, you were early implementers of making changes to those plans, knowing costs are going up and to keep costs in line. So I think you're looking in good shape from that standpoint. Usually this is where I get into if we have any deficiencies. I'm happy to say all the issues we had last year are now gone. Everything's cleaned up, you know, staff, management, the board, you've all stepped up, done a very good job of getting the different issues in line, and I think you got a good staff. There's turnover. I think it's working well. I'm not seeing any hiccups there. So that's my short version. Is it 80 degrees outside yet, or do I need to keep talking?
Anyway, it's nice to see that there's no mentions of the treasurer's office in this one.
Yes. Yes. All right. That's all I have. Unless we can go deeper if we want to keep talking until it gets in the 70-degree range.
Commend the board, I guess, for the culture of living
Oh, I got
within their means and.
A couple more hours.
For their work.
You know,
I was surprised to see the OPEB went down that far, and I just did a thing, 28%. That's a pretty good decrease. So
Mhm.
yeah, that's commendable. It really
Scott
is.
did hand out this other
Yeah.
chart that we put together just to kind of illustrate the changes that have been made and the decreases that we've seen in the OPEB liability. And I'm not a bettor, but I am guessing that you're gonna see that continue to go down next year because we did create that OPEB trust in 2022, so that's not reflected in here. So I think it's gonna continue to improve.
And what this reflects is the tough decisions you've made as a board over the years. You know, you removed retiree health insurance, you added co-pays, these are difficult decisions that you've gone through. and fiscally, we weren't, able to continue some of these things in the challenge we had in MERS. So some of these changes, and plus you looked at the 65 and older several times, and we've made changes that have saved substantial dollars going down the road, but not impacted the benefit level. So I think there's been some good things that have happened as well that you've made with some of these decisions that still kept the benefit structures for 65 and older in particular, very similar to what it has.
No, I think we've done well, although I think that we've been fortunate in many ways too. I mean, we were fortunate the Eagle Mine came here and we had unexpected revenues popped up from that. Although then again, we had a negative because the Prescott Power Plant closed, so I guess,
Well, the
yings and the yangs, right?
The basics are there every year, so when you tackle where you have to participate in your health insurance, that was a big deal. Long-term places that don't do that, they're going down a bad road financially. So these are the kinds of things that show up every year.
I agree, although I feel like the incoming employees aren't as benefited as employees 20 years ago, so I feel bad about that. I don't know what to do about that, but I feel bad about that, so. One thing I want to make though, and I was thinking the other day, we have this inflation going on in this country, which is a bad thing. However, we get more money from uncapping taxes now, because it used to be we had proposal A and all the property taxes were capped and you can only go up by the rate of inflation. And it was always 1.5, somewhere in that neighborhood, right? Now we're gonna go up to the maximum. Was it 5?
I believe when
It's fine.
equalization was here in the spring, it was close to 5 that they were predicting.
I think I think that's the most you can do. I think it says in proposal A, it's the rate of inflation or up to 5%.
We've had significant increases in taxable values for the last 2 years.
What?
And it's
Been a long time without any.
Well, I know, it was flat, but we're gonna get a big one this next year. For good or bad, I don't know.
I guess the motion would be in order to accept the audit report, carry out any recommendations of the auditor, and thank the Board of Commissioners and staff for their fiscal integrity.
So moved.
Support.
Motion and a support. Any other comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thanks. Next, action items, VA garage recommendation and Rescue 131, update. This is, the VA garage, the funding for the Veterans Affairs garage is coming from $130,000 plus Michigan Veterans Affairs Grant Program. Grant funding must be spent by the end of September. Any remaining dollars will be returned to the Michigan Veterans Affairs Program. The RFP reflected this and the requirement for the garage to be constructed with this timeline. The project can move forward as a standalone project for the bid price of $95,148.80. Rescue 131 edition. County Board of Commissioners earmarked $300,000 from its American Rescue Plan Act revenue loss funds for this building, and if needed, expected to use search and rescue funds reserved for the remainder. The bid exceeded original estimates by $267,094.14. It's felt that the increase in cost over the original estimate is a reflection of what is being experienced across the construction industry and some additional features such as a shower room storage and office. It's difficult to predict construction costs with increases anyway, but so the recommendations are to go with the Veterans Affairs Garage and Rescue 131 with bid price of $567,094.14. These are all good projects, and long-term, you're not gonna, who knows if the prices ever come down much in the future, so we need to get it done.
I
just wanted to add, Chairman, that there is a correction for the board in this. It's not significant, but I want to make sure I point it out. I got a correction today on the amount of grant funds for the VA garage. They have $93,000 So we have to supplement the rest with either existing operating costs or a small amount coming out in May. So I still recommend proceeding, but I want to be full disclosure on that. So thank you.
So the grant is 93,000 for the veterans. So very insignificant out of the general
Go
fund.
ahead.
So, I-
Yes, Associated Constructors was the lowest bid on this, and like we said, we don't know if materials are gonna be going up. There's a steady increase, it appears, finding the contractors and the prices, it's a gamble if it's ever gonna go down.
Joe?
Just a couple of questions. Did, how long did we put these bids out for?
Oh geez, these were for, 2 weeks? I believe it was two, we put them out and then actually 3 weeks, excuse me,
3 weeks? Okay, that's standard what we do, yeah.
pretty much.
But,
But we
okay,
did
go
try
ahead,
and-
I guess.
I noticed on the bid sheet, you've got 3 people bidding, and under the associated bid that indicates there's no on bid security, whereas the other 2 had bid security. But tell me about that.
Correct, they did not submit it at the time, it has been submitted since then, and we do have it for the garage right now.
Thank you.
These are 2 good projects that need to be done.
I'd like to make a motion to proceed with option 1, as difficult as it is to absorb these new higher increases, because I know a year or so ago, a few years ago, we talked about the 131 building and the cost of that compared to where we're looking at now. Certainly, the Veteran Affairs Garage is very important, as well as the 131 training facility. So I make the motion to support option 1.
I have
Motion by Commissioner Rocha, supported by Commissioner Adamini, Commissioner Nordine.
So, I mean, it looks like we anticipated 300,000 and it came in at 567. Oh my gosh, that's a big increase. It's not a little increase, it's a big increase. $250,000 increase. And I understand that prices are high now. I'm not sure, I guess, I've told everybody I've known that wanted to do construction in the last year, wait, because everything's crazy right now coming out of COVID. It reminds me of, there were no 2x4s 6 months ago, now there's a whole pile of them. So, I mean, it's recovering.
Mhm.
The country's recovering. It's a bad time to be building, so I'm not sure it's the right thing, although we have the money and I understand what needs to be done, and I'll support it, but I'm a little reluctant because I think that, I don't believe prices are gonna stay up, and I don't believe they're gonna continue to go up. I think this country will correct itself at some point, but there's my 2 cents.
Any other comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, Marquette County Health Department vehicle, Stone Garden grant equipment purchase. This is Marquette County Sheriff's Department under fiscal year 2019 operational. Stone Garden grant is seeking to purchase a specialized piece of narcotics detection equipment, and I guess you're gonna end up with 1 piece, so how is that gonna be able?
Well, what we do is we have the supervisor, there's the 3 different shifts, and the supervisor would have that equipment and go out to the scene with that. It's the same thing as we recently purchased the Bola wrap, which is a thing you shoot and wraps around your legs. It's the supervisor of each shift would carry that and go out to the scene.
But how do you do it so you have 5 cars on the road, and someone stops someone in 553 and says, yeah, I think there's narcotics, the supervisor's gonna run out to 553?
Yeah.
That seems,
Well, once you have the narcotics, and it's, the problem is there's been a lot of officers that have killed, basically. When I started, your instinct, you used to smell and you used to want to touch it and even taste it and see what it is in the car, and they're going the exact opposite now. Don't touch it, don't even open it, and this device is able to, because of things like fentanyl. I mean, it's so toxic. You get it on your skin and you absorb it and you're dead. And it's around us every day now. It's in, they're lacing marijuana, it's in everything. And so,
I don't
yeah.
deny the threat, I just am worried about the practical aspect of having more.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I have a question. Is this equipment precise enough that it would satisfy probable cause?
Yes.
Good question.
So the cost of the two NARC TM handheld narcotics is $27,600. The Stone Grant will fund $26,050. And that will leave the county an expense of $1,550, which will be paid on from the sheriff's department operating budget. So that's the recommendation, to authorize purchase of it without paying for it.
I would move to authorize the purchase of the narcotics analyzer for $27,600.
Support.
Moved by Commissioner Aho, supported by Commissioner Nordine. Comments or questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thanks.
Thank you.
Next is Marquette County Health Department vehicle memo. They've been paying employees to drive their cars around, and they figure it's much more efficient to have a vehicle to take them around. And they've got a bid here to authorize the purchase of two, let's see, 20,750 Subaru Impreza hatchback from Subaru of Marquette.
Waiting for a motion, I'll move to approve the purchase and accept the bid. Over.
I was just trying to
Motion
figure
and
out the bid.
support. In the long run, they figure they can do it more efficiently by having their own vehicle rather than paying employees, right?
That's their thought, yes.
So what is this vehicle for specifically?
They do a lot of travel with their work in the health department.
Is-
To help offset some of those costs.
So before they were using their personal vehicles and.
These are nurses, or is this the executive staff?
No, well, it's a variation. I think it's going to be what I understood was a vehicle for the office is over there. So I don't know who would be assigned to it. So I don't have a good answer for you.
I would have thought it would have been higher, to tell you the truth.
Would have too.
I was looking to see if it was new.
That's the first thing I thought.
I didn't think you could buy any car for 20,000 anymore.
Right, the Subaru, I mean, that's a good quality car, so no.
Anyway, we have a motion and a support. Any other questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next, server room cooler recommendation. As a result of the county's computer server upgrades, the existing Mitsubishi air conditioning unit is now too small to cool the IT server room adequately. Staff has proposed adding another 3-ton Mitsubishi air conditioning unit to cover the need to cooling requirements of the server room. They advertised the county for the bids for the additional units based on county policy. 3 bids were received and opened publicly. Dressler Mechanical Incorporated, $16,900. Prime Special Contracting, $19,265. Swick Plumbing and Heating, $22,907. This is funded with American Rescue Act funds. Recommendation to authorize proceeding with Dressler Mechanical to add the 3-ton to our existing server room with a proposal of $16,900.
I'll move to approve the recommendation as presented.
Moved by Commissioner DePietro,
Support.
supported by Commissioner Adamini. Any comments you want to make, sir?
Well, it's a good,
Just a question, Chairman. Do we have adequate power for that unit?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. We got a 2-ton system right now. We're gonna need a 5-ton, and by adding a 3, we're gonna meet those needs and have backup in case one failed.
I know in the
That's
past there
part
was
of it.
talk about electrical
Yes,
capacity.
oh, yes.
Yep.
Oh, yes.
Any other questions or comments from commissioners? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have appointment to Marquette County Solid Waste Authority. This technically is according to the policy of the Solid Waste Committee, would should be somebody from the west, but I guess they haven't followed it exactly all the time, but this one should be from the west, and we have 2 applicants. Mr. Adams is from the west, and Kellen Ramirez is from the east. So I guess I'll ask to take a roll call vote on it.
Commissioner DePietro,
Glenn Adams.
Commissioner DeRosa,
Adams,
Commissioner Orleans,
Adams.
Commissioner Elton,
Glenn Adams.
Adams. Next, I guess, we had good news Monday that Marquette County was added by the governor to the list for being able to get funds for the flooding that took place on May 12th in our county. So Scott and I talked it over when we were denied and made suggestions that we follow governor's aid here and state police and go to Ishpeming and work with the city manager that with the issues that they claimed they had. And Jeremy was cooperative and came along, and we had a chance to make an appeal of it. And so yesterday we found out that the appeal was signed onto by the governor, so Ishpeming will hopefully get their $550,000, which they had to take out of their ordinary operating budget for repairs to the sewer system and other things at Ishpeming. So I'd like to thank everybody that was involved with it, Scott, Jeremy, state police, and I guess myself, and it was great to see Marquette County got a break. Any other commissioner comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I totally agree with what you were saying, but Scott made the front page today, and according to the Mining Journal, it sounded like he was the one that had spent a lot of time getting all these agencies together between the Michigan State Police and the...
They're not always right, you know.
Huh?
They're not always right, mind you.
Yes, they are. This was,
gaining a little color.
yeah,
They're gaining a little color.
I called there and they were spot on, they said with this article. And also, I have the floor at this time. Also at this time, just before I left to come to our meeting, our county administrator was on TV6 being interviewed. And he did an excellent job of explaining to people throughout Marquette County where the money was going, because he even addressed the issue of Marquette County could not have taken that kind of money out of the budget to do all these repairs. And so he was very adamant about getting our Governor Whitmer on the same page with him and all the other agencies, and it worked out perfect. So kudos to our county administrator and whoever else you had with you during this time. Thank you.
And I would like to add kudos to Jeremy Hoskin. His aide here was very instrumental in putting this together.
We wouldn't have got this done without the cooperation of Jeremy Hosking, the governor's UP rep, in getting the state police there. and explaining to Ishpeming what they had done wrong by not cooperating with Mr. Hummel here, and we put it together right, so that was key, otherwise we'd be left with nothing,
And the governor had to do it too, so you gotta give her credit too.
right?
Even though I think some people in the UP were unhappy with some of her decisions during COVID, I think that she does some very good things. People have to recognize that.
So she's been very good in a lot of ways, and it's a very hard job, I guess, to say the least. Any other commissioner comments?
I want to say I agree with Commissioner Rudin about being a little nervous about just buying one of those drug testing things, but we bought it with the 1-year warranty, and of course, you could get a 5-year warranty there, but a lot more cost. And this is a fairly new application. And if it works really well after 1 year, I would recommend that maybe we look at buying another one or maybe 2 more if it's needed. But I think it's prudent, since it's so new, just to buy one to see if it really works.
And that Stone Garden grant probably comes back every year, right? So you can reapply.
It's a strange process. You see, this is from 2019, so we have to look at how the dollars were requested, what they do, and keep working those. Yes, they continue, yes.
Any other commissioner comments? Public comments? Public comments? Public comments? Anyway, it's nice to be back with the board. It's not much fun practicing walking.
I'm glad to have you back.
You did that 2 years over.
Meeting's adjourned.
You know, we haven't had public for a while on remotely. I wonder if we're gonna ever get rid of that, you know?